Hello and welcome. In our previous chapters, we learned the concepts of expected credit loss, or ECL, and the practical framework for implementing IFRS 9 in banks and financial institutions. Now it is time to answer the most important question. How do we actually calculate expected credit loss? In this chapter, we will learn the calculation process step by step using practical examples. Let us begin with a basic formula. Under IFRS 9, expected credit loss is generally calculated using three key components. The first component is probability of default, commonly known as PD. The second component is loss given default, or LGD. The third component is exposure at default, known as EID. The basic formula is ECL equals PD multiplied by LGD, multiplied by ALGD. Although banks often use complex models and software, almost every ECL calculation is built upon these three fundamental elements. Let us understand what each component means. Probability of default measures the likelihood that a borrower will fail to repay the loan. Loss given default measures how much loss the bank expects to suffer if default occurs. Exposure at default measures the amount outstanding at the time of default. Now let us apply these concepts in a practical example. Suppose a bank has granted a corporate loan of 100 million taka to ABC Manufacturing Limited. The borrower is financially healthy, repayments are up to date, and there is no indication of increased credit risk. Therefore, the loan remains in Stage 1. The bank estimates probability of default at 2%, loss given default at 35%, exposure at default at 100 million taka. Applying the formula, 2% multiplied by 35% multiplied by 100 million, the result is 700,000 taka. This means that although the borrower is performing well, the bank still recognizes an expected credit loss of 700,000 taka, because there is always some possibility of future default. This is one of the key principles of IFRS 9. Even good loans require provisions. Now let us consider a different scenario. Suppose another borrower, XYZ Trading, is facing business difficulties. Sales have declined, cash flow has weakened, and loan repayments are becoming irregular. The bank concludes that credit risk has increased significantly. The loan moves from Stage 1 to Stage 2. The outstanding balance remains 50 million taka. Because the loan is now in Stage 2, the bank must calculate lifetime expected credit losses. The assumptions are probability of default 15%, loss given default 45%, exposure at default 50 million taka. Applying the formula gives an expected credit loss of 3,375,000 taka. Notice how much larger the provision is compared to the Stage 1 example. This increase occurs because IFRS 9 requires banks to recognize losses over the entire remaining life of the loan rather than only the next 12 months. This is why stage migration is extremely important. A loan can remain current and still require a substantial increase in provision if credit risk has increased significantly. Now let us move to a Stage 3 example. Suppose PQR Textiles Limited has already defaulted. The loan is classified as non-performing. Legal recovery actions have started. The outstanding balance is 200 million taka. Since default has effectively occurred, the probability of default is assumed to be 100. Loss given default is estimated at 60%. Applying the formula gives an expected credit loss of 120 million taka. This means the bank expects to lose approximately 120 million taka after considering expected recoveries. Stage 3 loans usually attract the highest level of management attention, regulatory scrutiny, and audit review. Let us now discuss the role of collateral. Collateral can significantly reduce expected credit losses. Suppose a borrower owes 50 million taka. The bank holds land and building as collateral. After valuation and recovery cost adjustments, management estimates that 35 million taka can be recovered. This means the expected loss is 15 million taka. As a result, the loss given default becomes 30% instead of 100%. This example demonstrates why accurate collateral valuation is so important under IFRS 9. Now let us discuss forward-looking information. One of the most unique features of IFRS 9 is that it requires banks to consider future economic conditions. For example, management may expect inflation to rise, interest rates to increase, or export demand to decline. These factors may increase the probability of borrower default. As a result, the bank may adjust its ECL estimates upward. This ensures that provisions reflect future risks rather than only past events. Banks also use scenario analysis. Instead of relying on a single economic forecast, they typically prepare 3 scenarios: a base case scenario, an optimistic scenario, and a pessimistic scenario. Each scenario receives a probability weight. The final ECL becomes a weighted average of all scenarios. This approach provides a more balanced and realistic estimate of expected losses. Before we conclude, let us remember one important point. ECL calculations are not purely mathematical exercises. The quality of the final result depends on reliable data, appropriate assumptions, accurate staging, reasonable forward-looking information, proper governance, and effective management oversight. A sophisticated model using poor quality data will produce poor results. On the other hand, a simple model supported by reliable data and sound judgment often produces more meaningful outcomes. Let us summarize today's lesson. Expected credit loss is calculated using probability of default, loss given default, and exposure at default. Stage 1 assets use 12-month ECL. Stage 2 and Stage 3 assets use lifetime ECL. Collateral can significantly reduce losses. Forward-looking information and scenario analysis play a critical role in determining provisions. And finally, proper documentation, governance, and model validation are essential for successful IFRS 9 implementation. In the next chapter, we will explore model development, data requirements, and validation techniques for PD, LGD, and EAD models used by banks and financial institutions. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next chapter.